When Paula and her husband, Dr. Rikus Lowe, bought this Bauhaus-style home between the mountains and vineyards of Stellenbosch, the lady of the house did what she's loved doing since childhood and began planting.
Paula, usually when renovating, people start with the interiors, but you started with the garden. Why is that?
When we moved in, it was too noisy, and we had to start with the garden to soften the noise and plant different foliage, and it just started outside. This Leylandis is the plants that we plant the first because of their densities and small leaves. But there's a lot of plants that we had to replant after the Western Cape drought that we had last year. But some of the plants is amazing and they survived, like the clivias and the strelitzas. And most of the time I didn't have to worry about them, and it's just amazing to see how they grow if they get a little bit of rain.
The studio is on the west side of the house with a full view of a huge oak tree and the street outside. It's a space big enough to work on at least 4 paintings at once. The theme is set by the colorful Scandinavian-style lounge.
Wow, you have such a beautiful home. I love the mid-century theme. Does it carry throughout the house?
Thank you. Yes, this is the old part of the house, and that is the newly renovated part where my studio and main bedroom is. But we also loved this part of the house, and we wanted to keep certain elements that's typically of that era, like the steel frame windows, the light coming in, the white walls, and especially the beautiful staircase, which we immediately fell in love with. It reminds me of an old tree, also with the steel, that's exactly the same as the steel windows.
And are the floors original?
Yes, this is the tiles that we bought the house with. The story is actually quite nice because you can't find any of these clay tiles anymore. They are handmade and all the factories have closed down. But when we moved in here, there was a lot of pathways around the house. So when we started with the renovation, we lift up all those tiles and use them downstairs to keep the same feeling throughout the house.
I also noticed all your art hanging on the walls. What does each piece mean to you?
I love the blossom as a universal symbol of hope, but I get totally lost in plants and colors and the blossom. And what's quite interesting about this specific painting is this was the first painting that I painted in my new studio upstairs. With this green piece here, this is basically right at the end. I always go and I pick some branches and I will paint different ones of them and how they inspire me in stages in my studio. And I love to work from the actual plant, and then later on I tend to finish them with the help of photography.
It's the art with its spring theme which gives this time capsule of a room such life.
This is quite an interesting painting that's also to do with blossoms, but I've used the astrological inspiration of a Sunday paper, the whole kind of hexagons and astrology. So I enjoy to make my art fun for myself and tell stories when I paint.
How much of the kitchen did you have to renovate?
We wanted to keep the old kitchen, but it was too old. So in the whole process, we needed to renovate the kitchen as well. But we are so glad because we renovated most of the dark cupboards and we pulled in our dining room table, but we kept this old cupboard because we wanted it because it's actually the same color as the bridge. And we just changed the top and the backslash to a more modern kind of marble. So now it fits in with the old and the new.
Like both of the owners, architect Martin Geringer studied in the Free State and found himself working in wine country. All three were for keeping this spiral staircase and the building's late modern design. That said, space had to be created for a studio and more.
Martin, as the architect of this project, what was the brief that you were given?
Well, Jade, Paula and Rikus was very clear that we should stick to the original design of the house and the character. You could see they did a lot of research before, and I think they fell in love with the house even before I got onto the scene. So they were very involved in the project, and they gave me a very, very clear brief that this is the kind of look they wanted to go for. So we stuck to the Scandinavian kind of feel with the straight lines, white walls, and it kind of contrasted very well with the natural environment the grand oak tree in the front, the mountain view. And I think that's what makes it very successful.
And what advice do you have for anyone who wants to renovate their home?
Well, I think one should never be too hasty to make any changes. You should live in your house. Get in touch with your house's heart, almost. I know it's not always possible, but Paula and Rickers lived in their house for almost 2 years or 3 years before they started renovating. So it's a long process, and when you live in a house, you kind of get to know which parts you like and which parts work and which don't work. And I think then obviously also, don't limit your architect. Let him be creative. Although you're giving him a good brief, every architect wants to put his own stamp on his design.
Look up from reading your book, wander into the bedroom, and the twin peaks of the Yonkers Hook are there to greet you.
Paula, what a blessing to be able to wake up to this incredible view of the mountain and the vineyard.
It's wonderful because we're basically staying inside our garden again on this side of the house. When we wake up, we hear the birds sing in the morning, and you can, every single day, it's so nice to see which flower is blooming and if your garden is growing, and it's just amazing. And then above that, when you look up, you have this spectacular view around you.
Yes, Jade, it was an amazing opportunity for us when we did this renovation to create this big opening so that this whole garden, mountain view, everything comes right into the main bedroom. And we placed the bed away from the walls. And in doing this, we created extra space in the back of the bedroom for extra storage space.
This painting of artichoke flowers represents the different kinds of beauty a plant goes through in the full cycle of its life. Even Paula's choice of bath strongly suggests a seed pod with its organic shape. On the same level as the bedroom is the studio, where paintings tell stories. A blossom which reminds her of her grandmother, who used to make fruit jam.
This is such a beautiful space. What do you love most about your studio?
Oh, I love everything, from the cupboards to the system that we put in to help me move the paintings up and down with the dowels, and the light that's coming from outside. It's just wonderful.
Paula's focus on growth has come to stand for motherhood of her twin boys, Ben and Walt. Her use of slow-drying layered oil paint is in itself a process of growth.
The nicest part of this studio is that it's part of the house. And as a female artist, it's quite important because my kids are quite important to me as well. So if they need me, I can just go. And this just works wonderful for me.
Tell us about your process. Where does it start?
If you look upstairs, you will see it's just a blank canvas. I normally start with an undercoat, and then I start to play. And while I'm playing, I play with different kind of turbs and liquids, and it's all things that make paint see-through. And then you get different kind of layers, and those layers create depth. Otherwise, it's only a yellow or a brown. And the minute you create depth, it almost creates its own shadow and its own mystery. So the process of creating a background is as important as those detail marks that I put on top of it. And then the closeness of actually concentrating on something and then paint on top of that.
When do you feel that a painting is complete?
That's the most difficult part, being an artist. I tend to overwork, and if the painting is hanging in the studio, you tend to go back on that certain part, but you know it feels right. And then normally I move my art outside. When I work for solo, I don't like to keep the work in my studio. I tend to take off all the other works in my house and I hang them. So if I can live with a work without wanting to change that work, I know it's complete.
Paula's husband, Rickers Lowe, is a specialist physician with a love of creativity. His mother made jewelry for her gift shop and still paints to this day. His father made striking iron sculptures, and this house is a continuation of his family's proud artistic tradition.
Rickers, you have such a lovely place. What was the experience like renovating your dream home?
It was for us very rewarding. As the old part, we added the new part to preserve the old part. And nowadays, with our art from Paula that came in and growing, her house grew for us. And it was very special for us as a family, as for me as a husband and father, to have his house.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure to spend the day with you and your family.
Since meeting when she was studying fine art and he was doing medicine, this couple have renovated their fair share of properties. But it feels as if the roots they've put down here are for good, or for a good while at least.